Peace and power, family. Peace and power, family. We are about to get into it today. All right, we are about to get into our bill today. But before we do that, we gotta pay some bills. All right, we gotta pay some bills. So let me get off stage and get this thing ready.
The Uhuru Academy overall is an amazing school from the teacher to the students. It's a place where kids can build their confidence and learn how to write, read, type, all of that good stuff. We learn our history here. We honor our ancestors, so we learn about who we are and where we come from, and I really enjoy this about this school. And like everybody's pretty much saying, it's a safe space, and we can always be able to feel like we can open up to our classmates and our teachers. So that's what I love. I love the environment in that they promote not being afraid to ask for help.
Something positive about the Hoover Academy is this is a safe space, and you can be able to say whatever you want to say without being embarrassed, just like how Amani said. I've been able to, sometimes I can be shy talking around people, but y'all have taught me not to be shy and everything. This is a very good school. The part that I love about this is when we do ancestor reverence and African history.
I think it's the greatest school I've ever went to because you teach me about my history, and at the other schools they never taught me one thing about my history. They just taught, the only black people they talked about at my other schools were like Carter G. Woodson, Martin Luther King, and I think that's it. So you guys helped me learn my true history.
Attention Columbia. Join us this Thursday evening from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the House of Hathor, located at 6319 North Main Street, for a powerful cinematic experience, Mosiah the Movie. Discover the life and legacy of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the visionary leader who paved the way for future generations. This is more than just a film. It's a celebration of our history and heritage. Secure your spot now by visiting JuneteenthFreedomFest.com. Can't get your ticket online? No worries. You can make a donation of your choice at the door. Every dollar raised goes directly to supporting initiatives that bring African-centered education to our community. Your presence and support will help us continue to empower and uplift our youth. Don't miss this opportunity to connect with our rich history and contribute to a bright future. We'll see you there. And remember, before Malcolm, before Martin, there was the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Madasi Pa for you and Dr. Mayat for providing this wonderful camp in the middle of summer. I was very, very excited that we were able to allow Cody to participate. I've been in IT for 20 years myself. I'm a network operations analyst. And so when I was listening to the coursework from Baba Chaz, I'm sorry. I was really, really thrilled. I mean, the level of engagement, the information, the context. I'm like, Cody, this is, this is stuff that I do in our department. So, and not me specifically, but folks on within the department. So I just really am pleased. I'm grateful that she's being exposed. I want to thank you, Baba Amin, for your engagement, your sense of humor. Cody was always quoting you funny stuff that you said. I particularly like your ashe. It's extremely powerful. I love it. So I just want to give thanks. And, hopefully if the universe bends in our favor, we'll be able to participate again. Ashe.
Peace and power, family. It's your brother, Baba Amin Ojuwoke, and this is an afternoon build. I pray that I'm coming through loud and clear for everybody. I just got a registration in. That last video was a testimony from a parent from our UACI summer STEM camp. Right, we host a summer STEM camp. It's a partnership between the Uhuru Academy and Conscious Ingenuity. Shout out to Dr. Oya Mayat. We host a STEM camp every summer where students get online with us live and they learn African history and they learn valuable STEM skills. This year we're going to be focusing on coding and cybersecurity as well as AI technology. And so you want to sign up. Matter of fact, somebody just signed up, y'all. We only have 30 slots left. And those slots are going fast. All right. They're going fast. We're only doing 30 youth this year. I think we only have about 10 left now, as a matter of fact. So they're going fast. You want to go to UACISTEMcamp.com. Let me put that up here right now. You want to go to UACISTEMcamp.com. Right? You want to go to UACISTEMcamp.com right now and sign your baby up for this summer STEM camp. It's going to last from July 8th to July 19th. And we're going to have a lot of fun, ages 7 to 17. So make sure y'all get involved in that. All right. Also, the Columbia area, right? This Saturday, you have the South Carolina Juneteenth Freedom Fest this Saturday, June 15, 2024, from noon to 8 Eastern. That's going down at 421 Bush River Road, right here in Columbia. Visit JuneteenthFreedomFest.com, all right, to check that out. And come be in the house all day long. Festival, enjoying one another, music, fun, games, food, live performances. Man, it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it. All right. So we have that happening as well. All right. Whew. I think I played enough commercials. I think I promoted enough. You know what I'm saying? I think I've done that. I think I letting y'all know we out here working. We out here busy and we need y'all to get involved. We want you all to get involved. We want to continue to provide things on the ground in the community for you all to get involved in. All right. But let's get into today's build. Shall we? You know what I'm saying? And you know what? I got this
virtual background up and all that, and I guess that's cool, but I'm gonna take that down. I'm about to take that down, y'all. I'm about to take that down, and we're just gonna do that. And I'll just blur my little background. You know what I'm saying? So I can feel a little bit more natural. Let everybody know Bible's about to build. Let everybody know that we're about to build. Feel free to be in the comments. Feel free to like and share this video to spread it around. Another topic that I feel is that's very important for us to go over and for us to talk about. You know what I'm saying? And I don't usually talk about things that are going on in the news, but I want to talk about things that are going on in the news from now on, and that's kind of going to be something different about my build. I want to take things that are going on out there and then see what kind of lessons we can glean from it. You know what I'm saying? And today I want to talk about some controversial statements that were made by a Republican congressman, a brother named Byron Donalds, Representative Byron Donalds out of Florida, made some comments recently regarding Black families and Jim Crow. And boy, been having the black folk been, look, I done froze a little. Let me see if we're gonna jump back right. Here we go. All right. Cool. So it's been having the folks in the tizzy, man. They all up on MSNBC, all of the black people, black announcers and news folk are like, oh my goodness, this brother, I can't believe he said that it was better for black people during Jim Crow. I can't believe he said this and that, you know, about black folks and Jim Crow and another Trump. These black Trump supporters are crazy and that sort of thing. So they quickly politicized what he said. But before we get into it and start breaking it down, some of y'all may have seen it, some of you may not. I'm going to go ahead and play the clip. The sound bite, right? Because remember, these sound bites don't usually include context, right? So I'm going to go play this sound bite right quick. Okay, let me share this and y'all see it.
During Jim Crow, the black family was together. That's right. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are.
All right. Now, I'm not going to play the commentary. I'm not going to play the commentary from MSNBC at all. I'm not going to do that. Let me get myself together. All right. So let's break down what he said right quick, right? So in the beginning of the clip, he said during Jim Crow, the black family was together. That's what he said, right? During Jim Crow, the black family was together, right? And then he said during that time, black people voted more conservatively, right? So he said two key things, right? He said during Jim Crow, the black family was together, right? That I think that's the triggering statement right there, right? And he said during Jim Crow, black people voted more conservatively, right? Now let's look into what he's saying, right? So he's saying during Jim Crow. Now before we dive too deep into it, right? We're going to talk about what is Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow? And he says during Jim Crow, what time in history is he talking about? And that's important. That's important context to pull out of this, right? And knowing that we're not taught much about history in school, a lot of times when we learn about Jim Crow, we think water fountains, black water fountains, white water fountains, front of the bus, back of the bus, that sort of thing, right? But Jim Crow goes deeper. It goes deeper than just Jim Crow laws, right? And the black codes, right? So he said during Jim Crow, during this time, the black family was together. Now, the pundits came on after that and said, oh, this brother saying that life was better for black people during Jim Crow. Now, that's not really what he said, Though I can understand how one would get that sentiment that he's saying that during Jim Crow, right, the black family was together. Oh, you saying life was better for us during Jim Crow? Are you saying we were better during Jim Crow? Right? And so everybody ran with it. Everybody on CNN ran with it. Everybody on MSNBC ran with it. This brother saying that life was better for black people during Jim Crow. And then he said, during that time, black people voted more conservatively, right? Now we can really dive into that part of the statement, because one of the things that we have to remember, Representative Donalds, is that during that time, many black people were not allowed to vote. During that time, you had people like Fannie Lou Hamer, right, and others who were getting beaten over the head trying to vote. During that time, you had many states who instituted grandfather clauses and poll taxes, right, to prevent black people from being able to vote. During that time, you had the Democratic Freedom Party in Lowndes County, Alabama, right? Black people forming their own political parties, trying to run their own candidates, right? In areas where black people hadn't voted in almost 100 years since getting the right to vote after the Civil War with the 14th Amendment, right? So when he said black people voted more conservatively, I think what he meant was, after slavery, black people voted Republican. Most black people were Republicans because that was the party of Lincoln. So what he's saying is, when he's saying black people voted more conservatively, I believe he's saying that black people were voting Republican, which black people would vote largely Republican during that time because it was the party of what? The party of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, who's credited with signing the Emancipation Proclamation and so-called ending slavery, right? But he said it in a way to make you think that black people were voting for conservative issues, or that you're going to make the assumption that yesterday's Republican Party is the same as today's Republican Party, right? And so you have to know a little bit of history to really kind of break down what he's trying to say, right? And then when he says during Jim Crow, the black family was together, we're going to jump into that and see exactly what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? So we can give this some historical context, right? But before we do that, right, first, let's look at who is Byron Donalds, right? And I'm just going to go. I'm not here to disparage a black man. My students do not like me to do that. My students, when I go live, my students tell me, do not talk bad about other black people, Baba, even if you don't agree with some of the things that they say. And I'm going to honor that, right? I'm going to honor that. And so in introducing Congressman Byron Donalds to you, I'm going to introduce you to him through him, right? You can go to donalds.house.gov, right, and check out who this brother is. I'm not here to put him down, right? That's not. A lot of times we aim our disagreement at people. I aim my disagreement or my lessons at what was said, at the topic, right? So here we have Congressman Byron Donalds. You can go to his biography. He's a brother that grew up in Brooklyn, New York, hardworking, grew up a loving single mother. And understand that that's very intentional when we put the single mother in there, you know what I'm saying? That anyway, that's a whole nother video, right? He was a graduate of Florida State University. He served on several committees. Of course, he is a Republican. He's currently a governor. He represents Florida District number 19. Okay, he lives in Naples with his wife. They got 3 sons. He coaches, volunteers in youth football, that sort of thing, right? So this is the brother, right? And the brother, if you've been watching the news, if you keep up with it, he'll be on Fox, but he'll be on MSNBC, the whole 9 yards. He's one of the ones that are volunteered to go to any one of the networks and do his thing. He was on there with Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, a few days ago, talking about this very topic. You know what I'm saying? And he was getting on Reverend Al a little bit. You know, Reverend Al was clowning him behind those statements, and he was like, "Why don't y'all get this through y'all skull?" He kind of came at He kind of came at Reverend Al a little bit on it, saying that y'all taking it out of context. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. But you got to understand, in the sound bit generation, in the sound bite generation, right? You have to be careful with your words. But also, what I think is mainly showing is just a lack of knowledge of history. That's all. And he don't suffer that alone. He don't suffer that alone. It's like even those who are criticizing him are showing a lack of knowledge of our history. Now, I'm not talking about Reverend Al. Reverend Al knows our history. And so if he says anything that's kind of thrown off, it's very intentional, right? But this brother, you know what I'm saying? He's showing a lack of knowledge in our story, which is no different than most of us, because most of us did not receive a true version, a narrative of our story in school that really serves us. Right. So when the brother was saying during Jim Crow, the black family was together, he was saying during that time period, right, more black marriages more black families stuck together during that time, right? Now, I don't think he was meaning to say that Jim Crow was better for black people than not having Jim Crow. I doubt if that's what he meant, but for some, especially because he's a Trump supporter and all of that, some like, yeah, that's some Uncle Ruckus stuff that he's talking. And I'm not saying he's not an Uncle Ruckus. I'm just saying in that statement, he showed a lack of understanding. What I want to do is to help provide some context today, you know, with some understanding exactly what Jim Crow was, right? And what that Jim Crow era was, and what is the truth in what he was saying. I think when he was saying that black people were together during that time, he may be looking at stats. He may be looking at certain statistics, and I have them pulled up. Let me see. At least I had them pulled up. Let me see. Here they are right here. Right? So let me show y'all this. We're gonna cook in a little bit. Let me show y'all this. He may be talking about this, right? According to the Pew Research Center, right? In 1960, which is considered the Jim Crow era, right? Over 61% of black adults were married. It was really somewhere between 61 and 67% of black adults were married, which was a higher percentage than 67.4% of all people 14 years or older in the United States overall. In other words, in 1960, black folks were the most married people in America, in the United States, right? By 2008, that number dropped from 64% down to 32%. That's a drastic drop. And though the percentage of people married has dropped drastically across the board, there's been the most drastic drop has been in the black community. So when he says during Jim Crow, black families stayed together, I think this is what he's talking about, right? But to conflate that with Jim Crow, it implies that there was something about Jim Crow that kept us together. It implies that Jim Crow was the reason why black people stayed married, right? And you have to be careful when you say, instead of just saying in the 1960s, more black families were together. That would have made more sense. In the 1950s and 1960s, right? More black families stayed together. That would make more sense, right? But when you say during Jim Crow, black families stayed together. That lets that white person that sit up saying, see, I told you, freedom is bad for niggers, right? They are better people when they're enslaved. You have to put laws in place to make them work. You got to put laws in place to make them stay married. You got to put laws in place to keep them civilized because they savage. So when you say stuff like during Jim Crow, the black family stayed together. See, you're conflating two things, right? And when you do that, it gives people pause like, hold up, what you mean? We were better under Jim Crow? Is that what you're saying? No, but I think what he was supposed to say, what he should have said, was in the 1950s and 1960s, black families stayed together. That would have been a more poignant statement. And then that would have led to us saying, well, what was it about the 1950s and 1960s, right? that kept us together? Was it our belief system, right? Was it our circumstances? Why were more Black families staying together? Was it our collective spiritual and religious beliefs? And then we can start asking the question, why did the family split apart? But when you conflate it with Jim Crow, you imply that Black families were together because of Jim Crow. See, at least during Jim Crow, Black families stayed together. Soon as they start letting y'all go live around white folks, boom. Soon as they start letting y'all marry whoever y'all want to marry, boom. Which is kind of ironic because I understand that he's in an interracial marriage, right? So you can see where the misunderstanding comes in, but when there's a lack of historical context, see, we got to stop characterizing every moment in our history, you know what I'm saying, by how we're being treated by the United States. And we have to give Black people in the Black community more credit, right? Like a lot of times when we talk about, you know what, there were a lot more Black-owned businesses in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s than there are today. Someone is always going to come back and say, yeah, that's because of segregation. They couldn't go to white-owned businesses. So you mean to tell me the only reason why we had Black-owned businesses was because we couldn't go to white ones? We didn't really want to have our own hotels. We just couldn't go to their hotels. We didn't want to have our own land. We just couldn't work their land. We didn't want to have our own stores. We just couldn't go to their stores. I mean, who wants a store? We didn't want to have our own institutions and our own schools. We just wanted to go to their schools and go to schools with them. And when you get a narrative like that, right, you turn a blind eye when integration comes. When so-called integration comes and it's implemented in a way where Black institutions are destroyed, while a few Black people get included or accepted into traditionally white institutions. So you're sitting up and you're celebrating 9 children being integrated into Central High School in Arkansas. We're like, yay, look at that, we're integrating. But at the same time, Horace Mann Middle School, the Black school in Arkansas, was being targeted and shut down. The predominantly Black high school in Arkansas was being targeted and shut down. The city where I'm from in Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah, look, they're integrating Arlington Heights at the end of the 60s and early 70s. But we looked up in the most powerful Black high school in Fort Worth and maybe in Texas, I.M. Terrell High School, was being shut down. But we're applauding the success of integrating a few into this white school. But we have no fangs to fight the closure of the traditional Black school. And then we label the traditional Black institutions as something that only existed because we had no other choice. Do y'all see the mentality? Now that's what we call a Jim Crow mentality. See, it's one thing to have a Jim Crow law that says Black people got to do their thing over there, white people do your thing over here, Black people got to have separate accommodations and all that, and they said separate but equal, but it was hardly ever equal. It's one thing to live under that, right? And then to go in and you see that, wait a minute, the Black bathroom don't look nothing like the white bathroom. This ain't separate but equal. The Black train car don't look nothing like the white train car. This ain't separate but equal. It's one thing to go and say, okay, y'all put these laws in place and understand, not all Black people were mad at segregation laws. It was a safety issue. It wasn't safe in a lot of places to try to live among white people, especially a place that had been a slave state prior. It wasn't safe to be in the movies at the same time. It wasn't safe to be at the state fair at the same time, right? These wounds were still fresh. So a lot of Black people, like, we are cool being to ourselves. It's just that if we're going to pay taxes in, we want equal accommodations coming out. That's it. When I talk to elders, they talk about how, integration, the way it was done, ruined everything for them. They talked about their schools that they were proud of, that their Black communities built themselves. They talk about the general stores. They talk about the car service, the transportation businesses that they had, the mechanic shops, and how the dollar would circulate in the community for a whole year before it left the community. They talk about that. And they remember having everything that they needed. But then integration was implemented in a way that became an economic attack on Black institutions. While you were moving into the white community, they were building highways right down the middle of thriving Black communities. And we don't want to talk about that side of integration. While you're applauding Jackie Robinson playing for the Dodgers, right? No one's looking at the Independent Negro League. There was a multi-million-dollar business that helped the Black dollar circulate, going out of business. It deserved to survive. So I want to put some historical context in here, because while the pundits are criticizing him for saying, now you saying Jim Crow was better? You saying Jim Crow was better? Well, no, Jim Crow laws wasn't better, but during that era, we intentionally circulated our dollars, intentionally and naturally built institutions in our community and circulated our dollar in our community to the best of our ability. And we had to fight state-sponsored terrorism in order to survive. And those who are on the other side of the aisle criticize it, why don't they criticize that? Why don't we talk about the other side of that era? Because it wasn't just the Jim Crow era. It was also the Black Wall Street era. It was also the Black Power era, the circulating the Black dollar era, the new Negro movement, the new Negro era with Marcus Garvey. It was the Nation of Islam era. It was a Black church era where everything, the power in the community ran through the Black church. It was the Black church era. So you see the lack of historical context. Matter of fact, it would have made more sense if Representative Donalds would have called it the Black church era in the Black community, because it was. Yes, were Jim Crow laws in place throughout the South and the North? Absolutely. But did the Jim Crow laws define Black existence as a whole? No, it did not. Our elders and ancestors navigated around those Jim Crow laws and still managed to carve out an existence that in many places was a very positive and powerful existence. I think that's very important to understand. And Jim Crow is just as much a mentality as it is unwritten laws. Because you can change the laws in the books, but just like Carter G. Woodson says in The Miseducation of the Negro, if you make somebody come in through the back door long enough, right? It doesn't matter if you tell them that they can come through the front door. They'll still go through the back door. And if you remove the back door, they'll carve out a new back door in order to go through, because it's been ingrained in them to sit in the back of the bus. It's ingrained in them to come through the back. They're only comfortable being in the back. I hope y'all understanding what I'm telling y'all, right? I'm going to repurpose this video and turn it into a lot of short clips for everybody to get into. I just got a few minutes to go, but I want to take y'all to a website called blackpast.org. If you haven't checked out blackpast.org, there are a lot of great there's a lot of great information on this website, and I'm going to share my screen, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about Jim Crow. Okay, y'all see it? Jim Crow. right? A lot of times when people talk about Jim Crow, they're thinking about Jim Crow laws, right? But the term Jim Crow actually goes back to 1828 when a white New York comedian, a white what? Not a white Southern comedian, not a white comedian from Alabama. We're on blackpast.org right now with this information. And we're talking about the birth of Jim Crow, right? The birth of Jim. Where does Jim Crow come from, right? The term Jim Crow goes back to 1828. This is during slavery, right? A white New York comedian named Thomas Dartmouth, or Daddy Rice, performed in blackface, right? His song and dance that he called Jump Jim Crow. This was a song and dance routine, a blackface song and dance routine, y'all, that was the first pop culture phenomenon in United States history. This is one of the earliest pop hits or hit songs. He not only traveled the United States singing this song, he traveled the world singing this song in blackface, right? Now let's read about where he got it from. Rice's performance was supposedly inspired by the song and dance of a physically disabled black man he had seen in Cincinnati, Ohio, named either Jim Cuff or Jim Crow. So here you have a white man who wrote this song, and we're going to listen to the song, who wrote this song, and he based it on a physically disabled black man that he saw in Cincinnati, Ohio. The song became a huge hit in the 19th century, and Thomas Rice performed it across the country as Daddy Jim Crow, a caricature of a shabbily dressed African-American man. Jump Jim Crow initiated a new form of popular music and theatrical performance in the United States that focused their attention on the mockery of African Americans. So this whole style of music came into being, right, as a way to mock black people, as a way to make fun of African American culture and African American people. And this is the birth of pop music in the United States. So it's a trip that Hollywood was built on the backs of Birth of a Nation, the most racist movie ever made. And pop music is built on the back of Jumpin' Jim Crow, one of the most racist songs ever made. Both of them centered around you and how society wanted us to be portrayed. Jump Jim Crow. I'm going to read on. Jump Jim Crow initiated a new form of popular music and theatrical performance. All right, this new genre was called the minstrel show. So Jim Crow is not just a set of laws. The Jim Crow is the first minstrel show. Jim Crow as entertainment spread rapidly across the United States in the years before the Civil War and eventually around the world. So this was an American phenomenon, not just a Southern phenomenon. Jim Crow wasn't even born in the South. Jim Crow was born in the North by a northern white man who was mocking a northern Cincinnati, Ohio black man. An example of this influence came when the United States Special Ambassador to Central America, John Lloyd Stephens, arrived in Merida on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula in 1841. Check this out. Upon his arrival, local brass band played Jump Jim Crow. They played the song, mistakenly thinking it was the national anthem of the United States. The popularity of Jump Jim Crow and the blackface form of entertainment also prompted many whites to refer to most black males routinely as Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a stereotype that was born out of this hit song that was so popular that when the ambassador of the United States visited Mexico, they played Jump Jim Crow, thinking that it was the national anthem of the United States. That's the birth of Jim Crow. We're going to listen to the song right quick. We're going to listen to the song. Of course, somebody did a rendition of it on YouTube. Let's listen to the song right quick. And pardon my signal, I pray that it comes through clear. But let's listen to the song right quick. Daddy Rice, Jump Jim Crow.
Yes. Jim Crow. sung by sheet music singer. I come from old Kentucky a long time ago, where I first learned to wheel about and jump Jim Crow. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I used to take him fiddle every morning, afternoon, and charm the old buzzard and dance to the raccoon. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I whip my weight in wildcats, I need an alligator, and tear up more ground and give her 50 load of tater. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I sit upon a hornet's nest, I dance upon my head, I tie a viper round my neck, and then I goes to bed. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I am for freedom and for union altogether. Although I'm a black man, the white is called my brother. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm for a union to a gal, and this is a stubborn fact. But if I marry and don't like it, I'll nullify the act. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm tired of being a single man, and I'm determined to get a wife. For what I think the happiest is the sweet married life. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. It's very common among the white to marry and get divorced, but that I'll never do unless I'm really forced. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. Now, my brother niggers, I do not think it right that you should laugh at them who happen to be white. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm so glad that I'm a nigger, and don't you wish you was too? For then you'd gain popularity by jumping Jim Crow. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
That's Jim Crow. That's the original song that was played so much that people thought it was the national anthem of the United States. It was a song and dance done in blackface. And it was a propaganda tool to spread a stereotypical view of black people, of being simple, happy and jovial, love to dance, play the fiddle, irresponsible, ragged. And it was that image that was used to justify black codes. It was that image that was used to justify lynching. It was that image that was used to justify vagrancy laws and mass incarceration and sharecropping, and use to justify being unfair to black people, saying that it's not necessary to be fair. It's that image that's still being promoted today because many of us are still jumping Jim Crow. Many of us are still dancing when it ain't no music, laughing when nobody told a joke. Many of us get paid a lot of money to jump Jim Crow. You can look in the music industry and you can see hip hop artists that perpetuate a certain image. It's a Jim Crow image. Okay. In the song, he talked about Jim Crow, you know what I'm saying? Trying to charm the ladies. He talked about Jim Crow, you know what I'm saying? Hustling. And he talked about Jim Crow, you know what I'm saying? Doing these things. And so when you jump Jim Crow, when you put your big rope chains on, or when you jump out here and you talking about killing other black people and all this kind of stuff, you jump in Jim Crow. When our sisters are being over sexualized and treating twerking like it's a talent, having a big booty is a talent, you jump in Jim Crow. Anytime you out here perpetuating a stereotype for the entertainment of white people, you are jumping Jim Crow. You're being the minstrel show. And in politics, some of y'all might not be dancing. Some of y'all are physically dancing for them, but you dancing around the issues. You tap dancing around the issues that impact our community. You in there jumping Jim Crow too. And it's not talking about those of us that's in the hood, but many of us that are in the boardrooms, many of us that are on a political stage, we jumping Jim Crow too. You get around them and you become Jim Crow. We become that caricature. And there was a time during that time that Representative Donald is talking about, when we would leave our land and go into town, when we would go and be among them. A lot of times we had to jump Jim Crow to get out of there alive. A lot of times we had to jump Jim Crow to survive. We had to smile when it wasn't funny. We had to allow somebody to call us boy and gal and pickaninny and the N-word, while it was destroying us on the inside. We had to compromise our dignity. Many of our ancestors and elders worked domestic jobs and where they had to go into white homes that were abusive. But they took it because they had to raise a next generation up that would have more access to education, more access to mobility than what they had. It's just sad that when we came out of that era and that generation got a hold of that access, we took that access and moved away from the community with it. We took that access, and instead of continuing our institutions inside our community, we began to leave and take our resources outside of our community in the name of progress. Instead of building our businesses and institutions inside our community in the name of progress, we went and helped them develop and build institutions in their communities. Now we're in a situation where in our traditional communities, not only are they being gentrified, but you're also coming off of, we're maybe going into residential gentrification, but we've been in marketplace gentrification for decades now. What I mean by marketplace gentrification, right? Black-owned businesses have been pushed out of existence in many traditional Black communities, and non-Black businesses have moved in, whether it's the Asian corner store or the Middle Eastern corner store, the Asian nail shop, or, y'all know, the blueprint that's in our communities today. Whereas during that era, during the Black church era, the Nation of Islam era, the Black land era, because we had more land back then as well, right? So you had stronger Black families and you had a stronger Black dollar that circulated. We didn't have as many Black dollars as we had today, but we had a stronger Black dollar that circulated in our communities for at least a year before they left. Today, they say the Black dollar circulates for 6 hours before it leaves the community. But Representative Donalds, he can't say that. He can't criticize integration like that, the way it happened, because he's a benefactor of it. And your Black talking heads that are going against him, they can't criticize how integration was implemented because they are also benefactors of it. But there are so many of us who were not. There are so many of our families, and some of them come from those families. Some of them come from families who had thriving businesses during that era, whose businesses went away once once we could see that we can go to the other side of town and eat. Restaurants that closed down, hotels that closed down, private bus companies that closed down, private taxi companies that closed down. We won access, but we lost ownership. And another reason why they can't talk about it and won't talk about it is because that would lead to an outcry for more ownership. That would lead to a desire to rebuild that. So you have to look at that time when your dollar was circulating in your community as a bad time that you never want to go back to, because that feeds American corporate interests. So you won't even look at that era and have the ability to pick and choose what elements from that era do we need to keep and what do we need to throw away. What do we need to resurrect and bring back, and what do we need to stay buried? No, people just want you to bury the whole era. Just bury it all. It's time to bury Jim Crow. It's time to bury it as an effective tool to use to justify the mistreatment of Black people. It's time to bury it and stop allowing it as a tool to be used for us to justify not supporting ourselves and our own institutions. We make assumptions about each other as if we believe that the Jim Crow caricature is true. I'm glad he said what he said, because it sparks a conversation. And I pray that it sparks study. Get out here and be aware. Be aware. I know this is a vote for anybody except Trump election. I know this election, they're going to make it. This is all about not putting a certain person in office, right? But be aware of your alternative too. When they say anything but Trump, make sure you know what anything is too. And there are other alternatives out there. It was an honor to meet Dr. Cornel West last week. There are alternatives out there. And no, you may vote for an independent candidate that does not have a statistical chance of winning. But if you truly honor your ancestors and if you truly honor your vote, you would vote where your spirit is, regardless of the outcome, especially when it's been proven that neither one of the potential winners is a real win for you. Representative Donalds, keep studying. You're right. Statistically, more of our families were together during the era that we call Jim Crow. But it wasn't because of Jim Crow. It was because of the resilience, the faith, the unity, the determination, the will of Black people in America. The strength of Black people in America. So rename that era. Call it the Black family era. Because that's something we can get back to. That's something we can fix. That's something we could heal. That's what I got today. I pray that y'all got something out of this build. If you did, share the video, like the video, right? If you like this content and you want us to be able to continue to bring this content, support the Uhuru Academy. All right. You can support our school at bit.ly/build Uhuru, right? Or you can just support us via Cash App at $Uhuru Academy. We appreciate all your support. Spread the word, right? Spread the word. I didn't jump Jim Crow. In the song, he says, everybody wants to be an N-word because you can be popular. You can be popular when you jump Jim Crow. You can still get popular jumping Jim Crow. But I'd rather have 2 views as a strong black man than 1 million views as a stereotype. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you watching and listening. It's Amin signing off. Peace.